And welcome everybody to the Huddle on KGUD9 streaming platforms. We're talking sports here on this Tuesday afternoon. I'm Jason Barr, joined by Pat Parris. Pat, how are you?
I'm doing well, Jason. How are you?
All right. It is Huddle number 2 of season number 2. Certainly a lot to talk about. And we're going to talk about a few things today. Certainly it's revenge week for the University of Arizona basketball teams, both the men and women. The men trying to get a win against UCLA, the women against that controversial loss at Oregon, certainly with the officiating and Adia Barnes and Coach Graves. We'll get to that. We're going to talk a little bit about the NFL overtime rules. I think they need to be changed. And then we're certainly going to spend some time on Tom Brady's retirement, not just because he's Tom Brady, but Pat and I we've got different views on that. I think it's going to be a temporary retirement. Pat, I know you feel differently. We'll tease that and we'll get to that in just a little bit. But first, let's talk Arizona men's basketball. You know, Pat, that loss against UCLA last week, that was just a tough setup. Third game of a 3-game road trip, which is a big road trip in college basketball. They're tired. UCLA was sitting at home for him and waiting for him. But the good news here for the Wildcats is that now they're going to come in a little bit more rested, and they're right there, and they can still reclaim first place in the Pac-12 with a win on Thursday.
Yeah, and it does set up much better than it did a week ago, Jason, when you and I were talking about this game at UCLA. And I think we both realized that UCLA was a different animal than a lot of the teams that they've been facing in the Pac-12, especially to that point. And I think they needed a little bit of break. You know, they had those 3 consecutive games on the road, which doesn't usually happen in the Pac-12 scheduling, but because UCLA had COVID issues, that meant the game there at the UCLA before they got to come back home and play ASU. And I thought they were really flat against ASU in that first half. That happens as well. You go on a long road trip, first game back, you always have trouble getting your legs back underneath you. This time, Thursday when they play them, I think the issue is, for me, is U of A's got to kind of give them a shot in the mouth instead of the other way around. And when we've seen this team have trouble, we're talking about at Illinois, at Tennessee, and at UCLA. Okay, they came back and they won at Illinois. They didn't come back all the way and win at Tennessee, and they didn't come all the way back and win against UCLA. All 3 of those games, they were given a little jab right in the mouth, and it took them a while to kind of to get their senses and come back. They've got to be the ones that takes the game to UCLA on their home court. This is how they've got to be able to take advantage of the home court and of McHale and show UCLA it's not going to be the same game that was last week.
Now, one quick answer here to Jared Young. Thanks for writing in with your question. Do we ever do a huddle for local prep sports? Buena boys basketball looking for their 16th straight win this evening. I'm glad you told me about that. I didn't know that Buena had won 15 in a row. That we'll do on KGUD9 News. This isn't for high school sports, but KGUD9 News is for, and I'll be happy to mention how Buena does, and I'll take a look at that for KGUD. So thanks for that comment. Yeah, Pat, Arizona basketball, the men's team blowing out their opponents so much in the season, number 1 scoring margin in the country. The margin that they were winning by, that was a little bit not something that was going to last the whole year as they got caught up with teams that are a little bit better, teams that have seen the Wildcats and kind of preparing for them a little differently.
Yeah, you can't keep that unless you're Gonzaga and you're not in the Pac-12. You're not going to be able to keep that scoring margin up. I think that there are teams that are tougher matchups for Arizona, and other, even the best teams find teams that are tough matchups. UCLA might be one of those teams. That doesn't mean they can't win. That just means that, pound for pound, position by position, this is a tough matchup. And Jason, you and I both know this might be the second meeting in a week for a little over a week for U of A UCLA. It may not be the last time they face each other. They likely will see each other at the Pac-12 tournament, and who knows beyond that? I mean, you could face them in the NCAA tournament. So you as I mentioned, you got to come out with some fight immediately. And how about this? How about you hit some of your shots? They've been struggling the last couple of games at shooting the basketball, and we haven't seen that all year. I think it'll turn back around. At least I'm hoping.
Yeah, Mick Cronin, the UCLA coach, saying today, he was asked if he thought that Kirk Kriisa and Dalen Terry would again go combined 0 for 17. What was it? I got whatever it was. It was like 0 for 17 in the UCLA game. He was asked if he thought that was going to happen. No way. We also are going to hear now from Arizona men's basketball coach Tommy Lloyd. Pat, Tommy Lloyd was asked about teams slowing the tempo down against Arizona and not letting them play that track meet style. Here's what Tommy Lloyd said about that, and then we're going to come back and discuss.
Sometimes as you get later in the season, these games aren't going to be track meets. And I think it's important to be able to win games a lot of different styles. And we're okay having to grind it out in the half court. We're not afraid of that. I mean, it doesn't bother me a bit when you can defend like we do. Sometimes if there's less possessions, it could be to our advantage. So, we'll keep trying to play the way we want to play with great pace and tempo and ball movement. And but if the game kind of comes to a screeching halt, and I'm not opposed to starting to throw the ball inside more and seeing what those guys can do.
Pat, I don't think that's their preferred way of playing, but
No.
They do have a good defense, and they do have big men they could send inside. And sure, he's not going to say would rather play one way and let his opponents hear that. I think they can play that way, but that's not their preferred way of playing.
It's not their preferred way, because we know their preferred way is get a shot up the first 15 seconds, and they're trying to, get over a point per possession. That's one of those stats, sabermetric kind of stats that they look for. They're one of the top 10 in the country at points per possession. The last couple of games, though, it's been under 1. So that tells you their shooting hasn't been there. But I think an example of that, Jason, Arizona State tried to slow it down a little bit, too. They were a little more deliberate. And what ended up happening was he put in the Twin Towers. Tommy Lloyd put in his 2 7-footers. He calls them the Twin Towers. And there's a lot of that opportunity where you're trying to at least get one of those guys underneath with a mismatch where they can lob the ball in. It was almost like he was baiting coaches there, saying, "Oh, so you want to play that way? You want to slow it down? Go ahead, try to slow it down. We can play that way too." And they've shown they can do that.
Yeah. Okay. I just got a message. My computer will restart in 15 minutes after clicking OK. So we're not going to click OK. Let's instead talk about the women's basketball team, the other part of rivalry week here. Now, this had a little bit of a spice to it. U of A loses at Oregon. I'm not one of those blame the officials type of guys, but the official, it was nationally recognized that the officials really messed up pretty badly in this game. And afterwards, Adia Barnes and Kelly Graves, the Oregon coach, had some words after the game, apparently curse words. We're not going to know specifically what was said. There was a lot of chatter on Twitter. But now these two teams are going to be playing again this week at McHale Center, and a great chance for Arizona to get a win in the Pac-12. And I'll tell you what, Wildcats actually need a win in the Pac-12 because they're in 4th place right now in the standings. And you don't want to fall any far behind. I mean, the Pac-12 is arguably the best conference in the country, but you want as good a seed as possible. And the goal for Arizona is to get at least a number 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, because then they're going to host 2 games in the NCAA tournament. So, but a good chance for the Wildcats here against Oregon at home on later this week.
Yeah, and the thing of this Oregon game, you and I can say, oh, the referees kind of blew this one, or kind of
they did.
And I think they did. But when Adia Barnes says it, I don't think Adia Barnes has been known to say that regularly. I think it's a very rare instance when Adia Barnes has complained about the officiating. She got reprimanded by the league. She said we got homered during her post-game news conference. And I think that tells a lot when Adia Barnes, who I know while in the heat of the battle can sometimes lose her temper or have a temper, but generally by the time she gets into the post-game news conferences, she's settled down a little bit. She's composed herself. She wasn't. She was still pretty heated when they lost that game at Oregon. And I think this has everybody kind of excited about. And Jason, this team has already obviously captured the hearts of Tucsonans, and this is already in the second year in a row where I think everybody's paying as much or nearly as much to the women's team as they have the men's team. And why not add a little rivalry, a little spice to this game? And that's exactly what we're going to see. I'm looking forward to it. And getting a little revenge on your home court has a little extra satisfaction to it when you've got, what are they going to have, 10, 12,000 people there helping root them on? It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, looking forward to that later in the week. Robert Martinez, yes, the Super Bowl. We'll talk more about that next week. There's 2 weeks of hype for the Super Bowl, so let's wait on that a little bit. But thank you for the comment, for sure, and also a nice win for Arizona over ASU. Yeah, let's not forget they beat their rival for sure. U of A basketball. Okay.
That is an 8 o'clock game, Jason, on Friday night for the women.
At McDowell Center against Oregon. Yeah.
And interesting, it's the 8 o'clock game where the men's game on Thursday, it's
6
a 6 o'clock game. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying.
Yep.
All right. So let's switch gears now and talk NFL. We're going to get to Brady, but first, Pat, these overtime rules totally need to be changed.
I agree.
I agree. Somebody was watching with me. We were on the phone, and they couldn't understand if a team wins the toss and kicks a field goal, the other team gets a chance. But if a team wins a toss and gets a touchdown, the other team doesn't have a chance to get a touchdown. It just doesn't make common sense. And I don't think we were talking a lot about that when Brady did that and won the Super Bowl a few years ago.
I was, Jason.
Good for you.
Yes, yeah. I was.
But a lot of people are talking about it now. I have a feeling this gets changed through the competition committee in the offseason. I think they're going to change the rule come next year.
I hope they do. And I don't know. I do know why it didn't get talked about after Tom Brady won the Super Bowl, because Tom Brady won the Super Bowl. The Patriots won the Super Bowl. Robert Kraft won another Super Bowl. Great for them.
They've been all on the Patriots before, though.
But they should have changed it decades ago. I'm not sure why this became the NFL policy. It's the only professional football, college football, high school football. Nobody else has an overtime like they have. It doesn't make any sense. It makes zero sense. So,
well, keep in mind where they're coming from. It used to be sudden death. You could just go and kick a field goal, but the game has changed.
That was wrong too, Jason. It was wrong too.
Well, the field goal kickers are much better today than they used to be.
Here's why. And I go back to my days, my days is in the Arena Football League when Kurt Warner was quarterback of the Iowa Barnstormers. I know nobody wants to hear 1995 and all that kind of stuff. That's how far back.
That's a good year for me, 1995. I'll hear 1995.
Good for you. It was a pretty good year for me professionally too. I got to cover the Kurt Warner and the Barnstormers. But when John Foster invented that indoor football game, he was working for the NFL at the time, and the one thing he did was he was at a hockey game, and he said, we can play an NFL style game on a hockey rink. And he drew it all out in the back of an envelope, and the rest is history. But the one thing he did was he said, we got to have legitimate overtime. And it doesn't mean the first team that gets the ball gets a chance to win the game. And if they score, that it's over. It was never about that. And even you get the ball if they only kick a field goal. Well, it has to be each team possesses the ball once, period. And after that, if it's still tied, you keep playing. If it's not, then the team that scored either the 7 or the 3 that's ahead wins. It's just that simple. How hard is it to change that little part of the rule? I don't get it.
It has to do with where it started. I hear you. All right, so we do agree on that. So let's have some more fun with something that we may not see exactly eye to eye on here. What on earth? The Bucs are saying Tom Brady's retiring. I read the whole Tom Brady statement on social media. I didn't see the R word anywhere. Okay. When Ben Roethlisberger walked off that field for the Steelers, he was all emotional because he knew it was his last game. And he knew it was his career. It was over. When Tom Brady walked off that field a few days ago, he didn't look like he was saying goodbye to the game forever. He was just like a guy who needed a year off. Tom Brady is the bionic man. He's in fantastic shape. We all need a year off at some point in life. I think he's talked before about playing to age 50. I think he takes a year off and comes back into the NFL. And also, I'm not the first person who has said this. Tony Romo, who is pretty good at predicting things, has said the same thing. Real quickly here before I get to your take. Alex Steiniger, we polled viewers today on the Morning Blend. Now that Brady officially announces retirement, are you sad? 67% no said no, thank goodness. Well, that's because they beat his team. That's why they're not sad. Okay. All right. Pat, your take
there it is.
On the Brady retirement.
You are correct, sir, when you say that nowhere in his statement does he use the word retirement. However, in that statement, he says very, very clearly that I am not going to make that competitive commitment anymore. Period. It doesn't say for a year. It doesn't say I'm not going to make that competitive commitment for the next 6 months or the next 6 years. I might come back. I think what he simply did was he left the door that fraction of an inch open to say, I'm not going to make the mistake that some of the other great players of other leagues, and including the NFL, have done in the past. And that is use the retirement word, and then a year or two later, come back because you just decided circumstances have changed, or yes, you found that competitive fire again. I don't see it with Tom Brady at all. I think that when Tom Brady makes up his mind, he does it and he sticks with it. And he's got an apparel brand that he's launching. He's got teenage kids.
Have you
He's
seen
got a
that
wife.
apparel brand? There was nothing there I wanted to buy. Okay,
It's not
Tom
for you
Brady's
and me.
not a clothing designer, Pat. He's a football player. He's not a clothing designer. I didn't see any. I thought I was going to see GQ clothes. It was like lesser Nike clothes. Okay, what do the following athletes all have in common?
Yep.
Michael Jordan, greatest NBA player ever. Mario Lemieux. If Gretzky's the greatest hockey player, he's next.
He's number 2. Yeah.
Okay. Pele, greatest soccer player ever. George Foreman, he's up there. Bjorn Borg, Ryan Sandberg, there's many. What do they all have in common? They all came back.
Yep.
They all came back.
You know what they all?
Brady just led the NFL in passing yards.
I know he did.
I'm sorry, in touchdowns. He led it in touchdowns. This is not a player whose skills are finished. He's talked about playing till 50 before. I want to see more Tom Brady.
And you also have to look at Michael Jordan. You look at Mario Lemieux, and they were still playing very, very well when they retired. But here's the difference. Tom Brady's 44, right?
Doesn't matter.
He'll be 45. Just hear me out. He'll be 45 when the next season kicks off.
In August, he'll be 46 in 2023.
Michael Jordan, 38 when he came back. Mario Lemieux, 35 when he came back.
Oh, it's a different sport. You could play quarterback in your 40s.
You telling me you can skate and play like Mario Lemieux at age 35, and as a comparison to, I mean, that's a tough sport, Jason.
Pat, Gordie Howe played at 50
as a gimmick. George Foreman, 38. Ryan Sandberg, 36. Here's my
Warren Moon.
If you hear me,
back in his mid-40s and was terrific.
If you hear one thing from me, hear this: he'll be 45 years old.
46.
He'll be
the following August. Yep.
When you say he'll come back, Father Time is undefeated. 46, Father Time, not going to happen. That's all I'm saying. There's only one undefeated in this world in sports, and that's Father Time.
Like I said, Warren Moon played great in his mid-40s. That's a position.
So did Tom Brady. Tom Brady at 44.
That's a position you can play in your mid-40s.
Not when you get your bell rung. Not when you get hammered one time.
You do need a good offensive line. You do need to get the ball
serious.
Quickly.
To be really serious.
I am serious.
No, and I'm saying I want to get medically serious here for a second. If you're 46 and you come back, you're taking a huge risk with a concussion that you weren't taking necessarily a real serious blow like at 46 as you were at 36 or 26. I just think that has to factor in. He may not talk about it, but you've got to believe Giselle, his kids are all saying, Dad, you're in great shape. You have come through this unbelievably well at age 44.
Kids are going to be telling him to get out of the house in a year.
No. He's not retiring from his entire, adulthood. He's retiring from football. He's got plenty of other things to do. Don't forget.
I will say that I do think the stars would need to align for him to come back. It's got to be a really good team that wants him, wants a quarterback, has a good offensive line. Obviously the first thought is the 49ers if it doesn't work out with Trey Lance, but let's see how it plays out.
Yeah. And I'm not saying you're absolutely wrong, Jason. He could come back. I'm just saying my gut is that he's not, but like you mentioned all those guys who we never thought would come back, and they came back. So lots of
crazy stuff happens.
Absolutely.
Let's make sure I didn't miss any comments here. I do appreciate them. And anyone who wants to write in, if it's clean, we'll read it. I mean, really. But I think that all right. So let's finish it up here in some exciting later this week at McHale Center for sure. With the games against back-to-back
games at McHale like that, Jason. It doesn't.
You're
talking about
little taste of March Madness in February.
Exactly, and we're in a great era of Arizona athletics. Suddenly, just think a few years ago, we didn't see this necessarily coming, right? Things were kind of on a downward trajectory for the men's basketball team. Dia Barnes was there, and we were hopeful, but it still hadn't come up, and football was
hopeful for a winning record.
Right. And so now you're looking at it.
Don't forget that men's tennis team.
No, you're right. The men's tennis is great, and baseball and softball, and it's just Arizona athletics is back in one of those kind of remarkable situations like we saw in the 90s with this university, and hopefully it lasts a long time.
And we didn't even talk about T-Mac, Speedy Luke, and G7.
We didn't have to. We didn't have to.
The football recruits.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. All right,
I know.
Pat.
Yeah.
On a good note, let's end it there here. Thank you everybody for watching it, tuning in, and your comments, and listening to us on show 2, season 2 of the Huddle. For Pat Parris, I'm Jason Barr, and we'll see you at 5, 6, and 10 today on K-Gun 9 News.